Hello, my YouTube family. Welcome or welcome back, of course. We are talking hoodoo today. Hoodoo generally looks and feels and is practiced differently based on your geographical location, based on the region. The tools and traditions are literally built upon and surrounding, representing the people in that area. It's not just the people that shape hoodoo, but it's the history, the culture. If you want your spiritual work to be that much more powerful, that much more connected, learning your family tree, learning your ancestry, learning your history is the perfect way to do so. Disclaimer, this video will cover hoodoo regions that are a part of my lineage. We'll discuss others in other videos when I'm confident that I've done my good research. Again, my lineage. So I won't be getting too much into my family tree. If you're curious, that's maybe a video I'm willing to do later on. Let's start with the good old state of Mississippi. When you think Mississippi hoodoo, you think private and you think rural areas. Mississippi hoodoo is heavily influenced by Christianity. Psalms and the Bible just in general is super significant there. They're known for their root doctors and their folk magic. There's a big focus on crossroads work, on herbal and medicinal work, healing work, and generally earth magic. Something that's significant here is the idea that hoodoo is, in a sense, inherited through blood, right? The plantations in Mississippi and the energy that surrounds them and the history that surrounds them is super influential into hoodoo and into the traditions and practices. Generally, survival is what hoodoo is for, but especially in Mississippi hoodoo, slavery was intense. Racial violence was catastrophic. So ancestral work, that crossroads work, ancestral veneration, these things are super, super important and prioritized in Mississippi hoodoo. Leaning back into that earth magic, river work is super important and super, again, prioritized and respected in Mississippi hoodoo. You can't even imagine the things that river has carried on and passed along. When I also mention inherited by blood, something else that's interesting is it's usually spread orally, the traditions and the values, the principles, the practices. Although there is recorded history, this is not something that is intentionally tracked or recorded or publicized. Again, think rural, and think private. Okay, moving on to Memphis-based hoodoo. Quite a difference from Mississippi-based hoodoo. Memphis hoodoo is very much publicized, almost commercial in a sense. And that makes it a very, very powerful area or piece of land. The energy is very, very high. Why? Because this was a major transportation hub. Think about it. This is generations of people walking this space, going through stores and markets and shops. The area is very well traveled. Difference in Mississippi hoodoo, once again, this kind of commercialization of hoodoo was very common. There were go-to people, root workers, conjurers, who were providing services for people, not just Black people, not just slaves, everyone. That's not to say that it was welcomed by white people. It's not to say that it was on a mass scale, just widely accepted. Okay, not saying that. If anything, it created a lot of superstition surrounding hoodoo, and gave white people, gave white people an excuse to criticize it. That being said, what we also know about Memphis is that it is the hub of music, specifically blues. When you think Memphis, think blues music, blues magic. The music and nightlife history of Memphis, the energy that is still present around and carries till this day, it's intense. There are plenty of artists and songs who have intentionally put certain energies into their music. This is something that's very, very, very common in Memphis. Memphis is also known for its root work, specifically in legal cases, court cases. It's also known for handwork or handiwork, aka things like mojo bags, sachets. The focus on ancestral veneration is also really big here. We just see it manifest in a different way because of the history, because of the culture, the people. Like we talked about, we see this happen through music. But since trains were so significant, we also see this through crossroads work / train work / magic. If you guys want me to make a video on the train yard lore in Memphis, it's actually very, very interesting. I'd be happy to do that. Comment below if you're interested. But yeah, overall, Memphis Hoodoo is definitely a little bit more publicized. It's not as private. There's a little bit more of a focus on legal cases and music, blues, and dare I say mourning type of energy, right? Type of workings, turning things completely around type of workings. While Mississippi might have more of a focus on things like crossing and uncrossing, healing, medicinal work, herbal work. Not to say that every state can't practice these things, but we're just talking about what's more common. Moving on to Alabama, state I was born in. When we think of Alabama, we can definitely also think rural, sick. But it's a lot more biblical and traditional. The influence here is Protestant Christian, and there's a very, very, very big emphasis on household tradition. Similar to rural Mississippi, privacy is key here. There's actually a focus on protective work as well as healing work. And there's a very big focus here on prayer work. Similar to Mississippi, there were plenty of plantations in Alabama, and that energy has never stopped living and breathing and working. You know what I'm saying? So underneath all of those things that I've already mentioned, the biggest focus is ancestral and spirit veneration. Ancestral and spirit-led practices. Again, the Bible is very significant here, and reading Psalms during prayer work is super significant. Things like protective charms and bags are also very common and significant in Alabama Hoodoo. If you think about the bottle trees, the blue bottle trees, Alabama Hoodoo. Of course, again, it's not to say they don't do this other places, but I'm talking about my lineage here, and also I'm talking about what's most common. Again, there is that emphasis on family, tradition, inheritance of knowledge there. So unlike other places, this could be something that is passed down in the family, knowledge-wise, practices-wise, but again, not commonly talked about or known or spread around. Unlike Memphis Hoodoo, which we just talked about, and we know is very widely known about, even if not widely accepted till this day. Last but not least, let's talk about St. Louis-based Hoodoo. When I think about St. Louis Hoodoo, I think about the city, for sure, and I think more ritual or ceremonial. What's interesting is St. Louis Hoodoo and their history in general has been influenced by the Mississippi River, specifically the Mississippi River Port. This was literally a spot where they exchanged cultures, they exchanged traditions, exchanged knowledge. And if your mind started tingling when I said ritual and ceremonial earlier, and you started to think about voodoo, you're not wrong, because there's also voodoo influences here. If you guys would like, I can definitely make a separate video on slave rituals and slave ceremonies. But there are a lot of slave-inspired rituals and ceremonies in St. Louis-based Hoodoo. If you've ever heard of ring shouts, I'll try to put some pictures on the screen for you. I'm sure you've seen it, but you might not have heard it called that. Probably due to whitewashing and misinformation. But again, if you guys want another video, let me know. It's very interesting stuff. Although there is this sense of community and this sense of group ritual and ceremony here, they're also a bit secretive in St. Louis. They're not open with their craft, but prideful, yes. It's more common that in groups they do things like offerings, circle dances, even speaking in tongues, which again we know has been misconstrued. This also shows evidence of African ties and influences. If you ever have time, I want you to look up the Ulysses S. Grant Historical Site. They found hoodoo-based protective herbs in bundles. I'll also try to add some pictures of those on the screen as well. They had clear evidence of these practices, of these traditions that were being practiced not in Africa, but in St. Louis. I thought that was a very interesting tidbit to add in there, and really, I think as that little bit of clarity, you know what I mean, gives you a little bit of insight into where these traditions are coming from and why they look the way they do. Each place reflects the stories and the experiences of the people who live there. Not just live there, but lived there. Of course, it's different state to state, but it's also different within each state. And of course, there's differences between cities. My point in saying this is there are things that make hoodoo hoodoo. There are things that make, there are things that are commonalities between every Black person who practices hoodoo. But I really wanted to highlight the differences, highlight the things that make each region something special, something unique. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about this informational type of video. I really enjoy giving you guys the tea on hoodoo. I love to talk about hoodoo and I love to research hoodoo. And again, this is based on my own lineage. So of course, it's been fun researching my own background in history and family lineage. So I encourage you to do the same. Dive deep into what makes up you, okay? If you guys have any questions, curiosities, definitely leave them in the comments. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. If there are any things that I missed, any things that I might not be aware of, let me know, babe. I like to learn. All right, you guys, I love you. I appreciate you. And I cannot wait to see you either in a one-on-one booking where we can do divination or spell work, or of course, right back here on my YouTube channel. Bye, y'all.